Hello and welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I founded Oxford Clay, an eco-conscious pottery company. So on this podcast, we're going to be talking about all things pottery related, often with an eco-conscious twist, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go. Hi, so welcome back to the podcast. And in this episode, I wanted to talk to you about 4 tips for inspiring your creativity. So these are going to be a mixture of things that I've personally tried that I found really helpful for inspiring my own creativity, and also tips from other people's work that I've read, which really resonated with me. So let's get on to the first top tip for inspiring your creativity. Okay, so my first top tip is don't compare yourself to other people. So, there is that saying, comparison is the thief of joy, and that is absolutely true, in my opinion. So, like when you see other people's work, sometimes it can be inspiring, and sometimes you can think, oh gosh, they're loads better than me, I'll never be like that. And those kind of thoughts really do squash your own creativity and your own creative inspiration. And what I've personally found is that creativity for me comes from inside rather than outside. So although I am inspired, by things I kind of see around, most of my kind of sort of pings of creativity come from just like my own kind of inside rather than, looking at other people's stuff. So that would be my first top tip. Obviously look at other people's work and stuff if that's something that, you enjoy doing or that you do find inspiring. But quite often I think they can lead to sort of like negative self-talk, definitely for me. So I've kind of steered away from that, and it's really improved my kind of linking with my own creative practice, like inside. Okay, so my second top tip is to actually practice being creative. So this might sound really, counterintuitive if you're saying like, oh, my creativity comes from inside, but then like it's actually just a kind of practice. But actually what I found is that the more I practiced being creative, the more I wanted to be creative, and the more creativity started to kind of flow for me. So I've had times in my life where, I've been working lots and, I just didn't have the opportunity to be as creative as I am now. And I just found it was like the less I did it, the less I wanted to do it. And then when I started, practicing pottery again, fairly recently, it was like the more I did, the more I wanted to do, and the more ideas just like flowed to me. But it was from just like opening up the creative practice. So, creativity doesn't have to be necessarily like, doing pottery. If you want to do pottery, if you want to be more creative in pottery, creativity is basically, it can be just doing something new. It can be like doing something imperfectly. It can be just like doing something that's out of your comfort zone, taking like a new route to work, eating something new. It can be just like, it's basically the idea that, just being open to kind of like new things, new ways of doing things. That's my idea of creativity. So when I practice doing that, I find that like more ideas come to me and it just flows for me even more. Okay, so my third top tip is if you're feeling really kind of stuck creatively and like nothing's really coming to you, it could be that you're burned out and you might just need a rest. So, this is like counterintuitive to the practice creativity and it will come. Sometimes you're just so overworked that it's really difficult to access like that sort of inspired part of you, like the inspiration that comes from within. And when I've had times like that, it's when I've been really tired or just overworking, really. So my top tip for when you feel like that is basically just to take a break, and just have some time doing like nothing, just kind of daydreaming, or just doing something that's like just for the joy of doing it, rather than something to kind of like, oh, I must be creative and inspire myself. Just practice like, messing about with something, like being messy, or just maybe moving your body, or listening to music, or just taking time out, so rather than putting pressure on yourself, just enjoy resting. And often that can be just like the time and space you need for like ideas to come back to you and stuff. Okay, so my fourth top tip is actually not really my top tip. It's actually from this really fantastic book. So for those of you listening on the podcast, it's called The Why: Healthy Habits for an Epic Life by Isabel Cornish. And I got this book out of the library recently, and it's so good. It's got this really cool chapter on being creative. And she basically Isabel Cornish talks about how creativity is actually a really like healing aspect to your life, a sort of creative practice. And she talks about, how creativity is actually used in treatment of disordered eating. To kind of promote like a more sort of like flexible mindset, and as a kind of healing practice, basically. So she writes, the correlation between creativity and healing could be due to the way that art helps to express feelings and emotions, as well as challenge perfectionism and decreased flexibility. So I just couldn't agree with that more, really. It's really, creativity is just, so important. If you kind of have perfectionistic tendencies, it's really, it's a great thing to practice, really, just kind of, that kind of flexibility really that comes from creativity, getting things wrong, failing. So what Isabel Cornish, so one of her top tips for inspiring creativity is to be present in the moment. And so she talks about, if you're caught in the past or in the future, you'll be removed from what is right here and now. And like, she talks about how being present keeps you open to kind of inspiration that will just come to you just naturally from just being in the moment and being inspired by your surroundings. So she talks about like a beautiful, sunset, or just like, experiencing moments of joy. Being open to moments of joy, and how these can really, inspire you. So I just agree with that so much. It's fantastic. So I hope you found those 4 top tips on creativity helpful. So it could be either practicing more creativity, letting it flow, letting yourself be imperfect, fail at things. I'm doing inverted commas, if you're listening on the podcast, or it could be just taking a break from everything, conversely. So I feel like intuitively, by checking in with yourself, you kind of know what it is you need to kind of just inspire you. Either it's like getting out of your comfort zone, or it could be just resting, basically. And so I'm going to end with a quote, which is in Isabel Cornish's book, and it's such a good quote. It's actually by Carol Dweck, who was the author who wrote about the growth mindset, which I think is so applicable to pottery. So if you don't know about the growth mindset, basically, Carol Dweck talks about how there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset would be, a mindset which would be like, if you're trying something new, it'd be like, I'm never going to get better than it, at this. I don't know how to do it. It's impossible. I'm, inverted commas, no good at maths, so I'm not going to be able to do it. So it's kind of like closing your mind down, basically, to the opportunity of getting better at something. Whereas like a growth mindset would be like, okay, I can't do it now, but I'm sure I can learn, like some of it I might be like imperfect. I'm gonna make mistakes, but actually in the end I'll get better if I just like try and be open to kind of like getting it wrong, basically. So I think in pottery, the growth mindset is just such an incredible kind of attitude to apply to pottery, because quite often things aren't going right. Quite often in pottery, you kind of can spend a long time trying to make something, and then in the end, it's not just how you pictured it in your mind. Or like, it could be great going into the kiln, and when it comes out the kiln, you're like, what? That's horrible. So, inverted commas, a failure. So I think it's just, I think a growth mindset is just a fantastic mindset to apply to pottery. So this quote by Carol Dweck in Isabel Cornish's book is so good. It says, "Why waste time proving over and over how great you are when you could be getting better?" I just love that quote so much. It's just about kind of allowing yourself to get things wrong and to fail. And I just think, what a better attitude than that to apply to pottery. There is no better attitude, basically. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode on inspiring creativity. I hope it's given you some ideas to inspire your own creativity, and just enjoy. So if you liked that and you're interested in learning more about pottery, eco-conscious pottery, tools and techniques for potters, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website. There's blogs, ebooks, e-courses, video courses, and I can't wait to see you there. So the website is www.oxfordclay.co.uk.